Hi, my name is Moisés Perales, and the title of my talk is Reactions of English Language Learners to the Presence-absense of Evaluation in Academic Texts. The goal of this paper is to describe a group of adult Mexican English learners' ideologies about different evaluation patterns in English language scientific texts. Reading evaluative texts is known to be difficult for this population. Before I go on, I would like to clarify what is meant by evaluation in this paper. I take evaluation to mean the language resources that are used to convey a speaker or writer's position toward propositional content and toward other voices in the text. This includes personal pronouns, adjectives, modal verbs, when they are used for etching functions, adversatives, negatives, and so on. These resources are modeled in the appraisal system of systemic functional linguistics. This system comprises three subsystems. The subsystem of attitude, here in red, refers to adjectives mostly, and also sometimes verbs and nouns that very explicitly convey a writer's position. Like if I say, this is a good presentation, good would be adjective. Then there is the system of engagement. Engagement comprises those resources like modals and personal pronouns that make the writer or speaker's presence in the text clear, and also align that speaker or writer with other voices and propositions in the text. And finally, graduation covers resources that are used to scale up or scale down the strength of evaluation. I'm showing these two texts to exemplify these three areas of evaluation or appraisal. In red, we find linguistic exponents of attitude. In green, I show linguistic exponents of engagement, and then finally in blue, I show linguistic exponents of graduation. By the way, these texts were also the materials for this research project that I'm reporting in this presentation today. And now we'll explain the rationale for this project. We know that it is difficult for Mexican learners of English to read texts that contain evaluative language. We also know that in Spanish there are very strong language ideologies against the use of evaluation in academic texts, to the extent that academic Spanish has been prescribed as not including any explicit markers of evaluation. We also know that Spanish uses fewer evaluation markers than English, particularly in the area of medicine. And it is also well known that English publications increasingly follow this ideology of self-promotion that favors the use of evaluation markers in English. I will now explain the theoretical framework. This theoretical framework has two parts. One of them is appraisal, which I have already explained in some detail, and then there is the concept of language ideology. So what we see in this slide is one of the subsystems of appraisal, which is attitude. Attitude comprises three areas. There is appreciation, which is evaluations of things. There is judgment, which is evaluations of people in moral terms, and people's behavior, of course. And then there is affect, which is basically emotion. Now, within appreciation, we have subtypes of appreciation. We have valuation, which are linguistic exponents that would answer the question, how important or appropriate is this? Then impact, which responds to the question, how gripping? Then quality, how good? And then composition, how complex or how balanced something is. And here is the definition of language ideology, which is verbalized, shared, naturalized, language-focused beliefs, values, and feelings about language, in particular when they are deployed in order to justify or rationalize language structures, language use, language-oriented attitudes, or language-oriented behaviors. And now I turn attention to the methods. So the participants in this project were 40 Mexican health science majors at a public university in the Mexican Southeast. They were at level 7 and 8 of the Language Teaching Center's 8-level sequence. They were in years 4 and 5 of their degree programs, which were in medicine, nursing, and nutritional science. They read the two texts I showed you before, texts A and B, and they were asked to choose which one was a published text, the abstract of a published research article, and which one was not, and to justify their choice. It's important to mention that text A is the more evaluative text and text B is the less evaluative text. So the corpus that I analyzed were the participants' justifications of their choice of A or B as the published text. It consists of 998 words. I coded attitude and its subtypes that I showed in a previous slide, the subtypes being valuation, composition, quality, impact. And I also performed iterate reliability checks with a colleague of mine who helped me to code. Initially, we reached a 76% of integrated reliability, and we discussed the differences until we reached 100%. Then I read the texts very closely to determine ideology. And here are the results for participants who chose text A. What we have in the first row are the different subtypes of attitude and their polarity. That is, plus valuation means instances of valuation that were positive, plus composition means instances of composition that were positive. And as we can see here, these participants mostly used positive valuation to evaluate texts. Again, these participants chose text A, the most evaluative text, as the published one. Find relatively few instances of negative valuation. We find some instances of judgment, but very few. So what we see here are some examples. These participants evaluated, for example, in example 1, they evaluated the wording of text A as more technical and more scientific, because the texts really differ only in the linguistic exponents of appraisal. This is grounds to say that what this participant understood to be technical and scientific are the exponents of appraisal. In example 3, we find this participant who seems to be reacting to the system of engagement. So the first text, text A, it presents its techniques more explicitly as techniques that contrast with those of other studies. And in that sense, it presents other voices, it presents alternatives, and this participant reacts positively to that. He or she thinks that this is good, and this is why text A is published, because it does that. Finally, in example 4 here, this participant seems to react positively to the fact that the method in text A is not asserted, instead it is hedged with the use of might. And this participant seems to think that that's appropriate, and that makes the text a published one, because it hedged its results and its method. And here are the results for the participant who chose text B, and something that stands out is that there is more negative valuation in general, and this negative valuation was directed to text A, as we will see in a minute. But other than that, distribution is kind of similar, except that there were some values that were absent here. So here are some examples coming from the participants who chose text B as the published one, and here is the phenomenon I was telling you about. So this participant, for example, says el texto A tiene un lenguaje no formal, that is an instance of minus valuation, of negative valuation directed to text A. And this participant also evaluates B, which is the less evaluative text, as formal and scientific. And it seems that for these participants, this idea of formality or technicality is connected to impersonality. For example, in example 10, this person wrote that el texto B presenta una estructura más elaborada because it is written in the third person. And they contrast that with text text A, and they say that text A is less technical or uses fewer technical terms, which is not accurate. And the fact that they mention the third person in contrast with the technical terms gives grounds to interpret that this technicality is their way of saying that the text is impersonal or written in the third person. Here are some further examples, and the first one here, which is numbered as 11, is very interesting because it casts a negative light on the use of we. The writer of this example said that el texto A, which includes personal pronouns, aparenta una apropiación intensa de la investigación. And let's remember that apropiarse, according to the Diccionario del Español en México, means like to take ownership of something that is not yours. It's almost like to steal, and this person seems to dislike that. This apropiación conveys a negative evaluation of the fact that the writers in text, they attach themselves to the text by using we and our. And he or she thought that B was more neutral, and that's why it was published, because it is a more neutral text that doesn't include these first person markers. Similarly, in example 12, the writer wrote that he chose B because A includes nosotros, and he or she doesn't think nosotros is allowed in professional journals. Similarly, the author of example 13 thought that it was not okay to use the first person and not okay to use may and might in a published text, which is why they chose B instead of A. So what we can conclude is that the choice of B as published was based on this ideology that is aligned with the prescriptions for academic Spanish discussed by Garcia Negroni, meaning no evaluation should be used in academic Spanish. Some of these participants clearly focused on first-person pronouns and models as inappropriate for an academic publication, and they tended to use labels such as formal, neutral, objective, and also technical and scientific to characterize text B, which is less evaluative than text A. By contrast, choosing text A as the published one was connected to an ideology that values the inclusion of appraisal features for several reasons, such as showing clear authorship, showing clear authorial commitment to the results, and considering alternative perspectives. It is noteworthy that some of these participants who chose A, like the ones who chose B, said that A was more scientific or more technical, which seems to imply that that's the way they refer to appraisal as scientific and technical. This matches the ideology of self-promotion in dialogue with other voices that prevails in English language international publications. So it is possible that the participants who chose text B actually read more research articles in English, but we would need to use ethnographic methods in order to ascertain this for sure. In general, these results are similar to those in Chen 2016 and Zhu 2016, who found that Asian English language learners at the college level and beyond had very little awareness of evaluative language, and they tended to prefer texts that were less evaluative. Interventions can be designed to raise learners' awareness of these ideologies and their effects. That is, when they need to publish something in English, this ideology of prescription of evaluation is not going to serve them well, and they should reflect on it and adapt themselves to other ideologies that are more conducive to getting their own papers published.
And that is all. We will now go on to the